isn't this? Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Strategic Planning Committee on the 5th of May. Starting off, I am your chairman today, Councillor Mike Howe, and we have a health and safety first. There is no fire alarm drill anticipated today. In the event of a fire alarm sounding, please leave the building through the nearest fire exit and by following the green running man signs above the doors, and make your way to the rear of the car park. If anyone needs assistance leaving the building in the event of an emergency evacuation, please let us know. The organiser of the meeting will tell you when it is safe to return. Please make sure all phones are either muted or switched off. Committee, I've had to take the chair today as our lovely chairman has decided he's doing other things today. And obviously to replace me, I'd like to nominate Jess Bailey. Committee, can you agree that? Would you agree that, please? Unanimous. Thank you very much, committee. And that. Right. I am your chair, Councillor Mike Howe, not Olive. And to my right is Vice Chair. Our clerk made a slight mistake, which is brilliant, so I'm not going to hold her to anything, is Councillor Jess Bailey. Supporting officers present are Ed Freeman, Assistant Director, Planning Strategy, Damien Hunter, Planning Solicitor, and Wendy Harris, Democratic Services Officer. Can I remind everyone present that this meeting is recorded for publication on the Council's website? Please can members and officers making a contribution to the meeting use a microphone, or your comments will not be recorded. We will now start the meeting by doing a roll call of committee members and declarations of interest. Wendy.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with yourself, Councillor Howe.
Yes, present and no declarations.
Thank you. Councillor Jess Bailey, Vice Chair.
Present, and I'd like it noted, please, that I'm a Devon County Councillor, but it's not an interest to be, it's just for information, please.
Any particular items?
All the items, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Blakey.
Present and no declarations.
Councillor Faithful. Councillor Fernley.
Present, no declarations.
Thank you. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Present, and I have received lobbying in respect of agenda item 7 and the Reg 19 consultation, specifically with regards to Exmo 20. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hayward.
Present and declaration on agenda item number 7, similar to Councillor Bailey, and affects NRI as a Devon County Councillor for Axminster Division. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Young.
Present, and I've received lobbying emails, the same as Councillor Fitzgerald.
Item 7. Yep. Thank you. Councillor Ledger.
Present and similar to Councillor Young, Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you. Councillor Levine.
Present, and like our chair, I've come dressed for heated debate.
No declarations?
Declarations.
Thank you. Councillor Parr.
Present, no declarations.
Thank you. Can I pass the declarations to the non-committee members? If you could raise your hands if you do have any. Did I not call you Brian? Oh, I'm so sorry, Councillor Brian Bailey.
I've lost 4 stone and still I'm present and I've been lobbied on Xmas 20 and various other things regarding Xmas. Thank you.
Apologies again, Brian. So non-committee members, any declarations? No. Councillor Peter Faithful has just arrived, so I'll just wait for him to settle in and then I'll ask for his declarations. Back to you, Chair, in the meantime.
Thank you very much. Right. Agenda item 1, minutes of the previous meeting. Our minutes have been queried, and as such, although I think we have an agreed position, it's not been written up for signing. In general, though, otherwise, with one query, and I can't remember if all of you have been copied into the one query or not now. No. Where is it? We will leave the minutes for the next meeting, although, as I say, yeah. Oh, hang on. Where is it, Melanie? There she is. Is that what we said? Yeah. We will leave the minutes till the next meeting because they'll be sorted out and printed for everybody to see, which makes it fairer for everybody. In that case, Councillor Faithful, are you ready?
Nothing to declare.
Thank you very much. Wendy, do we have apologies?
Yes, we do. Councillor Todd Olive, Councillor Ben Ingham and Councillor Ollie Davey.
Thank you very much. And then on to public speaking. Can I call our first speaker, Nigel Humphreys, please?
Good morning. We keep on being told that we have been listened to or not being ignored. Yet more than 4 years ago and over 60 SPC meetings and public discussions, where are we? For Exmoor 20, unfortunately, not very far, as the issues that existed at the start have still not been resolved. We were told to have our say, and we did, twice in Reg 19, and what happened? Nothing. We are now being told to have our say at the planning inspector hearings. We will then be told to have our say at the planning application stage, no doubt. When does it stop? I do not have the time to list everything again, but the 400-metre buffer zone continues to be handled inconsistently and with conflicting views. The evidence from statutory and non-statutory consultations and your own sustainability appraisal, which underpin and justify the local plan soundness, clearly state a greater limit to development in the Exmoor 20 buffer zone than that what is stated in the draft local plan. Do you intend to correct the plan or maintain the contradiction by continuing to ignore the evidence and the comments made in the consultations? And how will you justify these decisions to the inspector? Access to and from Exmoor 20 continues to be uncertain, despite numerous requests for clarification. A February 2026 DCC Freedom of Information request identifies that DCC provided EDDC with forecast vehicle flows on roads around the Pebblebed Heaths, with a daily increase of over 2,500 vehicles to be seen on the B3179, of which over 2,200 would be due to Exmoor 20, with the assumption that Exmoor 20 would have a primary access from the B3179 and that all but local traffic from Exmoor 20 would be along the B3179. So how do these statements fit in with the ambiguous ones in the draft local plan of bulk via B3179 and modest via Southern Wood? What exactly does all but local traffic mean? Could all site traffic be allowed via Southern Wood as long as it's classed as local use? Again, ambiguous. The inconsistencies I have mentioned here, along with others that have been well documented but ignored since September 2024, could and should have all been resolved. You now have an additional 7 months to do something about it. So I ask again for you to seriously reconsider Exmo 20 and please use this additional time wisely. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Nicola Wright, please. Can you press the right-hand button in front of you?
Good morning, Chair and councillors. I'd like to speak about the proposed development of land at Hale Farm. Currently, as you sweep down the hill, Honiton lies before you, part of the valley being an area of national outstanding beauty, where we regularly see deer, heron, and sheep and cattle graze. The A35 trunk road is already very busy, a main artery to Dorchester and beyond, and to the ports. From the top of the hill, 2 very sharp bends are before you, and it's not until you traverse the second bend that you can see the road layout. The listed Copper Castle, junction with Pine Park Road, and the bus stop on your right, and the listed toll gates and the proposed site entrance. I understand from information gleaned from the East Devon District Council Planning Office that road widening, speed limits, etc., would alleviate any safety or traffic issues. I guess if you threw enough money at these problems, they could be overcome. However, what you cannot overcome is the impact on the environment, destroying a beautiful landscape which can never be recovered. The site itself has a spring line across it and slopes sharply down into the stream below, which in turn runs into the River Otter, which has dangerously high bacteria levels. Sections of the river have been classified by the Environment Agency as having poor ecological status, placing it in the bottom 20% nationally. Figures show that phosphate levels in the river are around 50% above safe limits, doubling downstream of major sewage works. Their findings have raised concern about infrastructure capacity, particularly where new housing is planned. An article in last week's Herald Express states that councillors have unanimously blocked new housing developments until sewage concerns are solved and whether existing infrastructure can cope with further development. It states formally that the council should continue to oppose any new development until the sewage system is proven to be capable. I implore East Devon Council to consider very carefully any development of this site and the impact it will have on Honiton, its residents and its wildlife. Please, let's not spoil it for future generations. Our national framework states clearly that the countryside must be preserved, but we understand the East Devon District Council Planning Department has a remit to enable development, but at what cost? Its job description is to build houses. The hill coming down into Honiton was Honiton's original gateway and was referred to as the town in the countryside. I'd like to end with the words of Daniel Defoe, who in 1724 wrote in his account of Honiton Hill, and I quote, "The best and pleasantest part of the whole county. Coming down the hill to the entrance of Honiton, the view of the county is the most beautiful landscape. I do not remember the like in one place in England." Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. John Hamill next, please.
Some people in this room, despite your political affiliations, must be thanking the government for throwing this proposed plan a lifeline. To quote the report, due to ongoing work streams, the plan isn't ready. Well, it was never going to be ready for the June deadline, even though we were assured time and time again all is on track. We see the extra time as both a lifeline and a threat. The lifeline is the opportunity at long last to write the essential documents and to allow the public to comment from an informed basis on the plan that will be submitted for inspection. The dark side, however, is that it allows opportunistic development to be progressed. It cannot be a coincidence that many residents who live around EXMO 20 have been approached by a developer with some pretty drawings and an invitation to a webinar where they will present their ideas of EXMO 20. Interestingly, their letter is dated 24th of April. We were advised on the afternoon of the 20th of April of the delay. You can draw whatever conclusions you like from that. I would like this morning to focus your attention to the gunning principles, which are 4 legal standards endorsed by the Supreme Court, determining whether a public consultation is fair and lawful. Principle 4 from the Local Government Association's website tells us conscientious consideration must be given to the consultation before a decision is made. Decision makers, which is you, should be able to provide evidence that they took consultation responses into account. I ask you whether you have. In summary, this council has an obligation to provide a detailed, auditable trail of analysis and consideration of all consultations. There were, as you know, in total nearly 2,800 comments on Exmo 20, raising significant legal, environmental and deliverability concerns, which were then reduced by AI to a series of generic bullet points. By the admission of officers, no human has engaged with these responses, let alone reviewed and considered them. In fact, there is no evidence whatsoever of meaningful engagement with the material arguments raised, or who raised them, and what consideration has been given to them. None of the reports has detailed whether any of the requested changes have been accepted or rejected. However, more by luck than judgment, there is still time to get it right. Your officers propose a summer or autumn submission date. Don't fall into that trap. You have 6 months. Take the time available, and this time make sure it's right. Get the basics right. Today's report tells us there are 8 key pieces of work not complete, including absolute fundamentals like the HRA. This work needs to be finished and presented. Only then can the plan be consulted on to satisfy your gunning principles obligations. So, councillors, please insist on consultation 3 in the interests of your legal duty, your constituents, our environment, our future, and your own conscience. Bang.
Thank you very much. Philip Parsons.
In December 2023, there was a critical legal shift when Section 85 of the Countryside and Rights of Way Act 2000 was updated. It states, in exercising or performing any functions in relation to, or so to as affect, land in an area of outstanding natural beauty in England, a relevant authority must seek to further the purpose of conserving and enhancing the natural beauty of the national landscape. Relevant authorities must take all reasonable steps to explore how the natural beauty can be conserved and enhanced. It's an active duty, not a passive one. The duty goes beyond mitigation, like-for-like measures and replacement. They must be able to demonstrate actively conserving and enhancing the natural beauty of the national landscape, and this should be open to scrutiny. Your policy on national landscape uses very similar wording and states specifically that no major developments in national landscape will only be permitted in exceptional circumstances and where it can be demonstrated to be in the public interest. As an example, I'll reference Sidmouth 34A and 34B. This land is wholly in the national landscape and a site I'm familiar with. The council unanimously rejected SID 34B to reduce harm to the landscape. Later, the council enlarged the proposed site at the request of the developer, now called SID 34, saying a less dense development would cause less visible harm. No mention was ever made of enhancing or conserving. The emerging plan now includes a major development site, which against the own council policy would make it unacceptable, and there's no evidence of giving allowable exceptional circumstances. The overall district housing target can't be considered to be an exceptional circumstance. After the first consultation, acknowledging the error, a simple clause was added to your document, asking a potential developer to enhance the landscape, incredibly by building many houses on it. As it's a major development, it's still violating your policy. The delay in submission of the emerging local plan is an opportunity to correct this. The council should reject the progress report proposal that no changes should be made after 3,000 plus heartfelt comments by the residents that they represent. I urge the council to re-evaluate and remove SID 34 and potentially those other sites in the national landscape. Then, if it makes a substantial change to the overall housing target, sites outside the national landscape should be modified or other sort. It may be difficult, but not impossible. Then the emerging plan could be legally compliant and the council could demonstrate their adherence to the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act of 2023 in acting to enhance and conserve the national landscape and, importantly, respect the consultation progress. Finally, the East Devon Management Plan for the National Landscape says, through nature-based solutions that act across society, East Devon National Landscape will become a wilder, greener, more resilient landscape where nature thrives along people. That doesn't sound like a strategy that includes building on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Thomas Teleso, please.
Firstly, regarding the 3rd of March meeting where the video recording had parts deleted, I thank your solicitor, Mrs. Wellman, for her professionalism in recognising errors and errors made and apologising where she felt necessary. This is ongoing. Mrs. Wellman is undertaking a review of decisions made prior from a legal point of view. This is what you should be doing with the local plan now. You have 2 Regulation 19 consultations complete, yet you have stated no one has read the first and you have no intention of reading the second. Pointless. Reg 19 is a legal test. To simply ignore the feedback is irresponsible and goes against the Inspectorate's guidance. The LPA should rigorously assess the plan to ensure it is sound and legally compliant, paying careful attention to viability. This approach may raise uncomfortable questions, but the LPA should not rely on the Inspector to fix deficient plans at examination. But this is exactly your approach, and your not yet known air quality mitigation strategy, now 15 months with no solution, could have serious viability implications. The HRA can be an iterative process if you include the site selection in the iterations. The mitigation informs the site selection, which is impossible and unlawful, people over wind, when you lock down the site selections in 2024 prior to even having the appropriate assessments. We all want a plan that can be adopted so we can get out of this tilted balance. As clear as day, this plan is not ready, but you now have 6-7 months to submit a sound and legally compliant plan. You must reconsider the housing numbers. You have enormous year-on-year drops in the standard method calculations, lowest data figures since 2003, yet you voted to keep the high numbers last autumn and may vote to do the same again. The plan went into Reg 19 with an agreed 10% headroom. It's now at over 16 and by adoption will likely be 20. You're trying to use a transitional 80% allowance, but then adding massive headroom. Why? I hear many say that the high numbers are from central government, and if you remove a site, you need to find another one. Not true. You are voluntarily choosing to decimate more of East Devon's countryside than Westminster requires. Why aren't you telling your constituents that? The inspectors reviewed Team Bridges' plan and said 20% headroom for 5 years, then 5% for the entire remainder of the plan. So use this time. Mitigation hierarchy assessments, use the housing oversupply to remove sites identified. That process needs to be demonstrated anyway, and a plan reliant on mitigation will not be looked on favourably at examination. Remember, avoidance over mitigation. Question. Does this local planning authority, East Devon District Council, as the legally defined competent authority under the Conservation of Habitats and Species Regulations 2017, believe it is fulfilling its duty as the competent authority? Exmo 20 is a site that has a mountain of legislation and evidence against it, and its inclusion undermines the viability of the whole plan. Remove it and see how the mitigation and the plan improves. Councillors, suggest this today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Margaret Evans, please.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to talk about the land at Hale Close Farm. The proposed building site, known as Honey 18, adjoins an area of outstanding natural beauty with views across to Dumpton Hill, really spectacular. At the strategic planning meeting held on the 29th of October 25, a last-minute proposal was submitted to build a housing estate comprising 136 houses right across this piece of land. As it was a last-minute submission, I don't think anyone at the Town Council had had time to review it. Consequently, there was little opposition to adding this beautiful greenfield site with its natural springs to the 25-year building plan. It appears no more consideration than that was given to it. At the same meeting, a proposal to build houses on farmland adjacent to Heathfield to the west of Tesco's was rejected on the basis that it would ruin the view of Honiton when approaching from Sidmouth direction. Why was the approach to Honiton important for the Heathfield site and not for Honey 18 site, when clearly the view of Honiton approaching from Axminster would be ruined? This suggests an inconsistent approach by the Planning Committee. A recent water cycle study requested by East Devon District Council found that sewerage treatment systems are already under severe strain, with Honiton operating at around 40% capacity deficit relative to demand. The report concluded that no additional housing should be approved in affected catchments until sewage treatment capacity and phosphate removal are addressed. Councillor Charlotte Fitzgerald, and I quote, said in East Devon is committed to resisting development where we don't have the sewerage treatment capacity, and water cycle study will help put a barrier against this development with water treatment when water treatment can't take it. Can the Planning Committee please confirm that they are adhering to the conclusions set out in the study they commissioned and will not be approving additional housing plans until sewage situation is resolved? The excessive volume of traffic on Kings Road was recognised over 20 years ago when proposals were drawn up to create a bypass from the A303 near Moncton to the A35 just short of Offwell. The completion of this housing estate with some 200 cars and service vehicles will significantly increase the volume of traffic on a road which was considered excessive 20 years ago. Additionally, there are natural springs which crisscross the fields, making them wholly unsuitable to build on. Building in spring line poses significant risks to structural integrity, safety and long-term maintenance of buildings. The consequences arise from constant water pressure, soil saturation and potential erosion beneath the structures. It feels like this building plan is being railroaded through the planning system without due consideration given to environmental issues, infrastructure needs or the landscape. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Liz Lees, please.
I am here representing a group of Sidford residents. We are working together to oppose Site 6A and any possible future allocation of 6B. We are seriously concerned about the Green Wedge policy and National Landscape Policy being overridden in order for development of this site after being rejected during earlier consultation. The proposed allocation falls within East Devon National Landscape. NPPF states great weight must be given to conserving and enhancing the landscape and scenic beauty of these areas. We are extremely concerned that once this site is accepted for development, this then sets precedent for others such as 6B to follow, with a further development of 238 houses. The irreversible harm this will have on our beautiful countryside will permanently degrade the character of this statutory protected area, which provides significant value to the local economy through tourism and well-being. Site 6A is designated as a green wedge. Development here will be the start of the erosion of the physical and visual gap between Sidford and Sidbury, leading to urban sprawl. Allowing development on this site undermines the integrity of the green wedge designation across the entire district, making it impossible for the council to defend other sensitive gaps in the future. EDDC's own strategy is to concentrate growth on sustainable, purpose-built communities rather than bolting on unsustainable developments to existing villages in sensitive locations. National policy states a brownfield-first approach. The council has not yet exhausted all urban regeneration opportunities or grey belt sites before resorting to the destruction of high-value national landscapes. It will have a detrimental impact to local heritage and loss of biodiversity. This site is in close proximity to Sidbury Castle, a scheduled monument, and Brook Farm, a Grade 2 listed longhouse. We believe these sites are unsound and not legally compliant and request they are removed from the final local plan to protect the unique character of this area for future generations. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. And that is it. Thank you ever so much, public speakers. Excellent timekeeping for all of you, and very well done to all the speakers. Mr. Freeman, would you like to reply, please?
Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I'm not going to respond to every individual point in turn, but some key points to pull out from the public speaking. I think the first thing to say is we obviously understand there are still lots of concerns in relation to a number of allocations in the plan, and those concerns have been expressed consistently through a number of the consultations. We have heard those comments, and they have been considered throughout the process. I think the report highlights, over 60 meetings of this meeting, the different consultations, the feedback reports that the committee has heard and considered. So there is that audit trail. We have considered all of the comments. Ultimately, at this stage of plan production, clearly there are still some outstanding objections to the plan, and those, to my mind, need to be considered through the examination process of the plan. The time for amending the plan, consulting, amending has happened. We've been through that process. There's been numerous consultations, numerous reports back to the committee, numerous considerations of those concerns, amendments to the plans made, further consultation. We've been through that process. Regulation 19 stage should be the final publication version of the plan. That's where we are. So the examination is the way forward for those concerns that are still outstanding. So I'm not recommending that members revisit the site allocations in the plan. You will see when we come to the main item, obviously there's the feedback report. Much of those comments have been made in previous consultations and were considered through the previous feedback reports and previous meetings of the committee. As I say, we're at the publication stage. The plan cannot be materially changed at this stage without a whole new consultation exercise. While we have a lot more time than we envisaged, it's not intended to use that time to do anything other than resolve the outstanding issues that are highlighted in my report, which we'll come on to, but primarily the habitat regulations issues. Turning to the habitat regulations issues themselves, I think there were a couple of questions about that. Just to respond to those, clearly we are working through the habitat regulations issues with our consultants in our capacity as competent authority to ensure that the plan is legally compliant at the point of submission, which is the requirement. So that's what we're currently doing. As I said, there's not an intention to carry out further consultation at this stage. We are entitled to update and amend evidence documents in the run-up to submission, and that's all we're intending. In terms of comments around national landscapes, I would direct the speakers to the topic paper on our website headed Major Developments in National Landscapes that sets out our approach and how we've considered development in national landscapes through the production of the plan and includes assessment of individual sites and allocations against their impact on the national landscape and the requirement to further the purposes of national landscapes. So that topic paper is on our website, and I urge those concerned on those issues to read and consider that document. Turning to further comments, I note some of the speakers around Honiton site, Honey 18, raising concerns about sewage capacity, which have been highlighted through our water cycle study. I would stress that there are measures in the plan to ensure that developments in those areas where there is limited or not at the present time sewage capacity, to ensure that those developments don't come forward until that capacity is available. Obviously, the plan is for 15 years up to 2042. So during that timescale, we're working with South West Water in the intention of additional capacity coming forward, and then those sites coming forward once that capacity is available. I think that's it. There's probably more detailed points that I haven't gone into, but I think that's it for the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right, in that case, moving on to agenda item 5, matters of urgency. There are none. Agenda item 6, confidential exempt items. There are none.
Councillor Howe, can we get our questions answered today? Sorry, we submitted prior.
Well, present, as I'm... Mr. Freeman believes he's answered most of them. We are coming up to obviously item 7, which is the local plan part, and as such, let's see what the discussion is there. I honestly cannot say at this minute in time, no, because it would take some work to do that. But as I say, that's the Mr. Freeman says, if you have any unanswered questions at the end of today's debate, please email Mr. Freeman. But nevertheless,
well, through you, Chair, as far as I was aware, I had answered the question. If it hasn't answered sufficiently, then by all means contact me. Yes, and I said that we were doing that.
Yeah. Thank you. Right, in that case, we'll move on to item 7, East Devon Local Plan, Progress Update Report. Pages 14 to 139, short report. Mr. Freeman, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As members will be aware, I had been intending to bring the plan through to you today for agreement to submit the plan for examination. However, due to ongoing work, in particular around the habitat regulations assessment work, which has already been mentioned, which is a legal compliance issue, we're not in a position to submit the plan as per the adopted local development scheme. However, we're slightly saved in terms of timescales by clarification of the timescales for submission of plans under the current plan making system, which means that we now actually have until the end of this calendar year to submit the plan and don't now need to submit the plan by, I think it was the 12th of June that we had been working to. So that's brought us some more time to work through these issues around the habitat regulations assessment work in particular. And we're currently working with our consultants to try and resolve those issues. So that's where we are in terms of timescales. I'm not in a position yet to update the local development scheme because we need to have further meetings with our consultants, particularly in relation to habitat regulations work, before we can do that. So hence you don't have an updated local development scheme in front of you today. We will bring that to a future meeting when we have greater clarity about the timescales moving forwards. What we do have today is the feedback report on the second stage of Regulation 19 consultation. I think at the previous meeting I brought a sort of high-level summary of that consultation. You've now got attached to this report the full feedback report, and in paragraph 3 you'll see there's some summaries of the key findings through that report. As I mentioned earlier, most of the consultation responses, I think, are basically on site allocations and reflect comments previously received in earlier stages of consultation. The intention of this consultation had been primarily to seek views on the amendments to the plan since that consultation, of which there are some, but the majority are about specific site allocations and raising the concerns, many of which you've heard already in relation to Exmo 20 and HONI 18. Just a couple of quick amendments to that feedback report. There are 2 typos within the report. The AI declaration on page 11 includes an incorrect date. It should read February to April 2026. And the header in the appendix still refers to stage 1 consultation rather than stage 2. So apologies for those typos. The intention would be to update those prior to publication on our website. The other thing to mention, actually just coming back to one of the public speakers, is just while we've used AI to summarise the consultation responses received, it doesn't mean that members of the team haven't read through those responses and considered them. It's not an entire AI process. We're declaring that we are using AI to help us to summarise into this report format fundamentally. So just to clarify that point for the record. The report then goes on to talk about ongoing evidence work. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail. I think a lot of this has been covered in previous reports and discussions, but we're still working with the highway authorities over transport work around West End developments. We're confident that we're close to agreement in terms of the planned development within this plan period, but those discussions, particularly in terms of Malcolm, obviously extend beyond that into how we accommodate the full 10,000 homes at Malcolm, which is an ongoing discussion and will take time to resolve. In terms of viability testing work at Malkin, we now have a draft viability report from the consultants and working that through and discussing that through with the various stakeholders. Playing pitch strategy and outdoor sports strategy is to be reported through shortly. Again, I've seen a draft of that and commented on that. But you may be aware, members may well be aware that that's coming through the Leisure Delivery Forum and then ultimately to Cabinet as a wider corporate strategy, but it does feed into the local plan as well. I mentioned air quality impacts at Pelbed Heath. I've got a meeting with the consultant team next week to work through that and understand where we are in terms of that. River Axe nutrient mitigation strategy, again, that's in the final stages of completion of the strategy document. Water cycle study, as I've mentioned in the report, there's a meeting with the consultant team and the Environment Agency later this week to work that through. So we are making progress on all of those areas. I think it's the HRA work that's the real issue at the moment in terms of that legal compliance issue. So hopefully I'll provide more of an update shortly on that once I've met with the consultant team next week. So a new local development scheme will follow, setting out a new timetable when we've got some more further clarity on that. In the meantime, members are asked to consider the feedback report that's before you, note the contents of the report and acknowledge the later submission date for submission of the plan for examination, and as I say, note the consultation feedback report that's pended. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Outside committee, any questions? Councillor Collins, did you want to speak on this one, or?
Thank you, Chair. I was hoping to speak in the public part, but you obviously had lots of speakers, and I don't want to take public speaking slots away from them. I watched a TV programme yesterday, which is quite rare for me to watch any television, and it was Escape to the Country, and they featured Devon. They featured 4 properties in Devon. It was a retired doctor and his wife wanting somewhere to retire to in the country with nature and everything in Devon. And it sort of struck me that that is the reason, you know, lots and lots of people looking around this room. Most of you weren't born in Devon, you come from other areas. You're taking houses away from local people. People I went to school with cannot afford to buy houses in East Devon. They just cannot. The programme yesterday said that the houses in Devon were £50,000 more than the national average. So one doesn't stand a chance. So we do need the right houses in the right places for local people, and I feel this plan in general is going to just exclude local people because they're going to be expensive houses that people can't afford because wages are so low. We have very few large employers in East Devon to create a good wage structure. And going back to this to what you're talking about, Honey 18, that definitely should be taken out because the public have not had a chance to have proper consultation and it been considered, because you're saying now that Regulation 19, the comments won't be used to alter the plan in any way. So how on earth where's democracy coming into that one? It's certainly not. Honiton Town Council have never been consulted on Honey 18. No, I'm not happy with it at all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Collins. In that case, no other public speakers? Over to committee. Councillor Faithful first, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it's a bit going back to the beginning of this agenda. Can we please go back to one meeting a month? Because sitting on it for 2 months with nothing to do, and then having 332 pages thrown at you and 10 days to read it through with all sorts of other things going on. I haven't had time to properly work through these documents. I have worked through as much as I could, but I'm struggling to cope with this. You know, if we had first agendas small enough that we can manage monthly, and also can we keep track of what's going on, because all of a sudden we're told now we've got 6 months. So we were told before going down to once every 2 months that we didn't have much to do, and yet we've got stacks of work to do between now and December. So can that be considered, please? Few questions I have got is, when will the viability work be available? Who are all the parties? Reference the road network at Malcolm, and what am I saying? Yeah, that's one meeting. I think that's enough for now.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hayward?
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of points, if I may. The first is just to come back to something Councillor Collins said, and an accusation that all us incomers have stolen all the houses. Effectively, each house that's bought by an incomer has been sold by someone here. They've got a choice. You don't want incomers to come in, don't sell your house. Similarly, each piece of field and green field that's been sold, farmland has been sold. I know Councillor Collins cares passionately for farmland and for food security, but each bit of farmland that's built on has been sold by a farmer. If they don't want it built on, don't sell it. If there's no land sold, no one can buy it. Therefore, no one can build on it. That's a simple calculation. Most people living here live in a house that originally was a field. Unless you live in one of the historic centre of Axminster, which has been a development since 300 BC, you're living in a house that's in a field. Once upon a time, other people had a view across their field where your house is. That's just the nature of development. East Devon has, I think, 7% of our land area is developed. 7%. If you look at the map of East Devon...
Questions still.
Are we on questions, Chair?
Carry on.
Thank you. So 7% of East Devon's built. When I came from Slough, you can tell from my accent, 35 to 39% of Slough is developed. 6% of Surrey is golf courses. It's all about land use. And yes, I hear from people here, you know, the people of Axminster don't want another 1,200 houses slammed onto the side of our little town. But that's what we're going to get. We're not in the AONB. We don't have the protection of a national landscape. And we've had speakers here from Collerton who don't want a housing estate in Collerton, from Sidbury, from Honiton, from Exmouth. No one wants development where they live. And this committee has been ruminating and discussing for years on how to develop a plan that accords with governmental numbers. Previous government, this new government, and potentially, who knows, a future government. So that's just my observation, and I had to come back on that because it's a necessity of housing. And all the people in Axminster who live in squalid, landlord-deprived housing would love a house in the countryside. That's why people flock here. But that aside, the one thing I'd like to do is, if I may, is each time we come here, we hear from speakers who speak passionately and they've done their research, and they throw at us and they throw at the chair and they throw at our officers another piece of legislation in sometimes accusatory tones by email and in person. And what I never actually see is a direct rebuttal. Mr. Freeman, you answer as best you can for the questions that are thrown at you, but then we don't see. We've had 3 key accusations today about why this plan is invalid, shouldn't be made. I think what I would like to see is each time we have those accusations made, the next time this committee meets is a summary of the accusation, this was made, this is our rebuttal. This is the legal view of the council. We have accorded with X, we have done Y in full compliance with the law. Otherwise, every meeting is started with a series of accusations. And this committee is trying. Now, thank you for applauding. I'm not saying you're correct. I'm just saying you're making accusations that I haven't seen a quantified rebuttal to. But in order for us to make decisions, we need absolute evidence and absolute assurance that everything is being done right. Ultimately, the planning inspector will throw out any plan that's not compliant. And I cannot conceive why our officers would put forward a plan that isn't compliant. Why would they? It's a pointless exercise. So I have faith in officers doing the right thing. But every time I hear an accusation about air quality, land quality, water quality, this, that, I never actually see the direct answer. I hear a statement, oh, we've answered it, but I'd like to see it written down myself, but to members, so we can see what's being said. And then each stage of the process, we know all the boxes have been ticked, the I's have been dotted, the T's have been crossed, we move to the next stage. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Jung.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ed, for the report. It's good news that we've got some months further to study the plan and get all our ducks in line before it goes to the inspector. One question is, it was arranged for a full council to be made on the 2nd of June. Is that going to be necessary now? I don't believe it is, which is good because I'm going to be going on holiday, so that's that. In response to some of the accusations, my ancestors actually do come from East Devon. I've got a churchyard in Yarcombe with a lot of my relations, so we moved away, I've moved back. I now, throughout history, people move around, and we have to comply with how people move and how people live. There's been a lot of information, some of it misinformation, in the press and social media on all important housing numbers for East Devon. I wonder if we could, either at this meeting or in the future, as my colleague from Axminster was suggesting, to have some more clarity on the affordability gap. The changes made to the housing numbers since the local plan started, because 1 minute we have one number, then we get government give another number, etc., etc. We need to know, if we don't get a local plan, what the numbers are going to be, and if we do have a local plan, what the numbers are going to be. What is the new local plan definitive housing target? That's vitally important, and we're being told that we're ignoring the housing numbers, we're not reassessing them. We need to get absolutely clear on how we're doing that. Do we have to assist in neighbouring council shortfalls? That's another accusation that we're being accused of, that we are going to be working with neighbouring councils. And there's another question that keeps coming up is that why do we carry on with a local plan with unitary happening? People imagine that when we go into unitary, all these plans are scrapped. That's not the case. We need to, there's so many accusations and suggestions, and if you go on AI, they're incorrect in giving some of these answers. So we need to have definitive answers to all these accusations and suggestions that are being made. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Some of them have been answered many times before, but we'll come back to that. Councillor Levine.
Let me speak.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, what most I wanted to say was already said by Councillor Hayward and Councillor Young. So I haven't got much to say except to tell my colleague, Councillor, I thought he was sitting behind me, so I can't remember his name. I live in a small village up in the Black Downs. I'm an incomer. And if it weren't for incomers in the Black Downs, all the villages would be dead, for the simple reason that we haven't got any amenities and we haven't got any facilities. It's rural Devon. The number of times that I've complained to Ed Freeman about facilities and amenities, we've got to travel 6 miles to a surgery. My next door neighbor, who happens to have a 16-year-old child, has to walk for 20 minutes along a main road to get the bus to school. So it is not, East Devon is a mixture of urban areas and rural areas. In urban areas, families can live, but not in rural Devon. But what I really would like to ask, and that's the question, when we're talking about SP01, there's a question about concerns were raised about classifications of settlements. And I can imagine that most of them was because developers are unhappy that they cannot increase the number of houses in some of our service villages. Have you got any reason for changing the classifications of our villages in rural East Devon? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bailey, Brian Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I've listened with interest, and I'm going to ask a basic question. Now, from what I can understand, the houses are in East Devon are not selling like hotcakes like they used to. The building in general has slowed down. And I take many people's point that the local people still can't afford a house in East Devon because they're so expensive. So I can't for the life of me understand why we're still pursuing these large numbers, where there's been some question of whether we have to abide by the government's numbers or whether we can try and amend them and get them lower. But if I understand Mr. Freeman correctly, because the 19 engagement has been taken place, the regulation, we can't alter that, which seems very strange to me, that we're still pursuing these large numbers when they're not selling and the prices are going to be astronomical. Take Exmouth 20, for example. I see there's a 16% affordable homes, 30% rented accommodation in some form, but the majority of them are going to be £400,000 plus is going to be the cost of those houses. So it doesn't comply. We have surveys on the demand for local people and what the local people need, and these surveys are being ignored because in Exmouth, for example, our main problem is single occupancy housing, flats, that sort of thing, for single people. That's not been addressed at all in any of the Exmouth 20. So I'm at a loss to understand why we appear to be going in the wrong direction. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Fitzgerald, please.
Thank you. So assuming we're still on questions, because I've got a few things that are not for debate. My questions are around the responses to the consultation. A couple of the statutory consultees have put in their concerns. One being the Environment Agency, and I know that Ed has said that he's meeting with them next week to talk about the water cycle study. But it says that the EA has one of its responses was that deficiencies in the water cycle study are affecting the plan's soundness, which has caused quite a lot of concern to me because, you know, this is a piece of work that we spent a lot of time working on and we're heavily reliant on it, preventing us from having to grant planning permission for sites which are going to be detrimental to our watercourses effectively. So just that's a question around are we, to what extent we are satisfied that we are going to be able to get to a position where the EA recognises the plan soundness on the basis of the strength of the water cycle study. And then another statutory consultee that came back, the NHS Devon ICB, stating that primary care infrastructure needs are not properly reflected in the IDP or allocations. That's on pages 55 and 56, calling for including explicit health infrastructure planning phasing obligations for some of our bigger sites. Is that something that we're going to be able to work towards and complete within the time available to us to get this thing complete? So that's one question. And then I suppose also, I'm not sure if this is a question, but it's regarding, there are some responses from developers and landowners querying some of our policies on things like accessible and adaptable housing and housing for older people. I had to laugh when I saw that they were suggesting that there wasn't an evidence base for there being a need for housing for older people in East Devon. But our policy sort of states that where commercially viable is used as a sort of within commas, I'm a little bit worried that that policy is not strong enough to withstand a developer coming along and saying, oh, it's not commercially viable for us to build appropriate housing for older people, and whether or not we should think about strengthening that based on the mood music that was coming through from these responses, which was that it looks like developers are going to push back on that policy in particular. Thank you.
Mr. Lodger.
It's a really quick one, actually. Following on from what Councillor Young said, so our 5-year affordability ratio has gone from 9.88 last year to 9.52 in the latest figures. Apologies. So with regard to our affordability ratio, it's last year it was up at 9.88. It's now gone down to 9.52. What material difference does that make to our total local housing need? Hopefully that answers Mr. Shilto's question that he posted earlier as well.
Mr. Freeman, are you ready?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so if we go back through in order, so if we go back to Councillor Faithfull's comments, I'm not sure what to say about the frequency of the meetings. I think that's for discussion outside of the meeting, really. I assume when you refer to viability work, you refer to Malcolm viability work, because the wider local plan viability work is published on our website and was part of the Reg 19 consultation. We have further work ongoing on Malcolm, which is currently at a draft stage, which we're reviewing as officers. We've already had a workshop with the developers and landowners that affects at Malcolm, so that's an ongoing sort of consultation engagement with them. But once the report is, the consultants' work is complete, we'll obviously add that to the website. Sorry, I was just reading my own writing. I think you asked about the parties involved in the road network at Malcolm. I mean, obviously it's ourselves, Devon County Councillors, the Local Highway Authority, and Highways England as the Strategic Road Network Highway Authority. So those are the three main parties. They've all got different consultant teams working for us as well. So it's a mixture of representatives directly from those bodies and their consultants. But those are the parties involved. In terms of Councillor Hayward's comments, Yes, I mean, certainly if it's members' wish, I can bring a report that, rebuts the various comments that have been made by public speakers in relation to the plan. I think it's all information that is out there and in the various reports that I've brought through the various meetings, but I appreciate it amounts to thousands of pages of reports and documents and things. So if members want a handy sort of response as FAQs, as it were, in a report, we can look to bring that to the next meeting if that's members' wish. I see nods, but might want to consider a resolution to that effect if that's members' wish. Turning to Councillor Young's comments, no, I don't think the full council meeting on the 2nd of June will be needed. We will need a full council meeting to consider the local plan, but later in the year. Clarity on the affordability gap. I mean, as Councillor Ledger said, the affordability gap is reducing, which is reducing our overall housing requirement figure. I think we've actually, if you go back far enough, come from over 10 homes being more than 10 times average salaries to now around the 9 mark. So it's gradually coming down, but it could go back up again. And this is part of the challenge, is that that's updated every year. And so our housing requirement under the standard method changes on an annual basis as a result of that. So last year it came down, and I think it reduced the housing requirement off the top of my head from about 18 homes a year. It has a very small impact, but when you calculate that out over the planned period, 18 homes a year over 15 years, it starts to become more significant. And it's the accumulation of those things that having come down each year over the last 2 or 3 years, I think it is. And so, yes, that has had an impact. So the changes to the housing numbers overall, I mean, there's a variety of issues. There's the affordability ratio, as I've said. There's the need for headroom within the plan, and that's a subjective judgment as to how much headroom we want to have in the plan. We're building more headroom than we'd originally envisaged, but of course, as I say, the affordability ratio could go the wrong way, and that could impact on that. There's also the risk of challenge at the examination. We know through the consultations that a number of developers are raising the point that we're taking the plan through 80% of the new standard method figure, and are challenging our approach to do that. The transitional arrangements allow us to do that, but they are making a case around, the acute housing needs in the district to mean that we shouldn't be doing that, that we should be planning for more. So there's an issue of challenge there, and it's helpful to obviously have more headroom in the plan to rebut those sorts of challenges. The other issue is in terms of the plan period itself, is that we need to have 15 years housing land supply at the point of adoption. So obviously the later adoption of the plan is, the less years there'll be in the plan. So the delays in terms of the timescale have an impact on that, but also we understand there are a lot of authorities looking to submit a plan by the end of this calendar year. So the planning inspector is going to be very busy next year, which could mean that the examination is delayed or takes longer. So it could be that by the time of adoption, we don't actually have 15 years of the plan left to run to 2042, at which point, if we've got more than that headroom, is giving us flex, I suppose, is what I'm saying, in terms of that calculation as well. So there are good reasons to leave the housing numbers position as it is. I think these points were made in a previous report last September, but again, it's buried away in lots of agendas. So again, if members wish, I can bring forward a further report that draws all of that out and explains the narrative around those housing numbers in a bit more detail and puts actual numbers to it. I don't have the numbers in my head to just reel them off. So just do we need to assist neighbouring councils? No, we don't have to. There obviously was the duty to cooperate, albeit it was a duty to cooperate rather than a duty to agree, so it didn't compel us to agree to take on neighbouring authorities. But in any event, the duty to cooperate no longer technically exists in its old form. We still need to work with neighbouring authorities, but we are not proposing, as things stand, to meet any of the housing need of our neighbouring authorities. There is no agreement in place to do so. The only ones that have asked in any way is Torbay, but they've not put forward any real evidence to support that ask. So we have rebutted that ask as things stand. So no, our housing numbers are purely about meeting the needs in East Devon. Why carry on with the local plan with local government reorganisation coming? Obviously, through local government reorganisation, there will be a new geography to plan to, and plans will be produced on that geography. But in the meantime, and I suspect it's not going to be the #1 priority for a new unitary organisation on the day of its inception to start making a plan for that area. And in any event, it's going to take a couple of years to produce that plan. In the meantime, we don't have a 5-year housing land supply. We don't have an up-to-date local plan, and that's impacting on decision making. So there is an acute need for us to have an up-to-date local plan. I'm hoping by getting this plan through and hopefully adopted as quickly as possible, we can leave East Devon in the best position possible from a planning perspective of having a clear strategy for how growth and development is accommodated in the coming years that will tide us over until any new unitary authority produces a plan for the wider geography of the area, whatever that looks like in the future. So I think there are very good reasons to continue with plan making in the meantime. Councillor Levine referred to the hierarchy of settlements. To my mind, the hierarchy of settlements is fundamental, which is why we took that report through and agreed the hierarchy right back at the start of the plan making process, which you'll see if you look at, I think it's Appendix 1 in the report that gives the chronology of it. I would strongly recommend against trying to revisit it now. It's like pulling a string on a cardigan, and the whole thing will start to fall apart because it's fundamental to the plan and the strategy that's been brought forward then, where we've considered sites, how we've considered those sites. I don't think you can go back and unpick that. I think there are a mixture of comments actually coming through in terms of the hierarchy of settlements. Some, as you say, from developers who want to promote sites in settlements where we're not currently considering growth as a result of our assessment of those settlements through the hierarchy. There's also some comments from those settlements that are not allocated for development within that hierarchy, where they feel that they want to see growth and development take place. And we have heard from them in previous meetings, and I have pointed out that they can still bring that forward, but through a neighbourhood plan. And that is the route for them to do that. If they can demonstrate why it's sustainable and appropriate in that location to do that through the neighbourhood plan. So hopefully that satisfies those communities, and obviously we will look to rebut those that argue against the settlement hierarchy, but I'm confident we have a clear methodology and approach there which is sound. Councillor Brian Bailey was asking why we're pursuing such large housing numbers when houses not selling. I can't really comment on the state of the housing market, but obviously the plan is through to 2042, so the housing market is inevitably going to ebb and flow during that time. Ultimately, our housing numbers are dictated by the standard method that's set by government, and we have to work to those numbers. That's based on a whole number of factors, including demographics change and growth in the population in the area, and things like that. So the housing market isn't a direct factor in that. But what we have got in the plan is obviously provisions for delivering affordable housing. So obviously to deliver affordable housing, you have to deliver more housing in total, because most of our affordable housing comes through as a proportion of the total numbers of homes coming through our policies that require, at the moment, 25% or 50% of those homes to be affordable. So in order to increase the number of affordable homes, you need to increase the total number of homes coming forward. And we've also got policies in the plan that look to control the types of housing, ensure that they're meeting local needs, and meeting the requirements of the native population. So those are provisions within the plan. So again, I think this is another good reason why we need to pursue the plan, is to ensure that we're delivering not just the number of homes that we need, but the types of housing that we need in the future, because those needs change over time. The current plan is out of date and not meeting the needs that we know we now have.
Thank you, Ed. I understand what you're saying, but my concern is that if we're building an area of outstanding natural beauty or national land, our policy is for 50% affordable. But we're not complying with that policy, aren't we? We're considerably down. We're at 30%, 25%. So why are we not enforcing that policy? Thank you.
So currently we have two different levels of affordable housing requirement in the district, depending on where in the district you are. It's 25% generally in the lower value areas, the urban areas, 50% outside of those areas. We don't tend to get many applications coming forward in the 50% area to ever need to secure it, to be honest, because those are by definition national landscape and areas where development is not encouraged. But all of these policies are subject to viability requirements, which is a government requirement. So if there are cases where those affordable housing requirements are not being met at the decision-making stage through individual applications, then it can only be for viability issues, in which case they will have gone through a whole assessment process of assessing the viability of the scheme and understanding that before we would have deviated from those requirements. And we would only have deviated from those requirements on a sound evidence base and in accordance with national policy. It's not something we would have done for any other reason, because obviously we want to deliver as much affordable housing as possible. So moving on to Councillor Fitzgerald's comments. So yes, you're right, the Environment Agency have some concerns with the water cycle study. I did bring a report, I think, to the previous meeting. I acknowledge those comments and I need to understand more what their concerns are. I have a meeting, I think it's Thursday this week, with them and with our consultant team to tease those out and understand. From what I've seen, I don't think they actually go to the soundness of the plan. You have to remember the water cycle study is one thing, and it's evidence for the local plan, but it's also fulfilling a wider purpose than just that. So deficiencies in the water cycle study don't necessarily mean that the local plan is unsound. That's something I need to tease out with them. But my understanding of their concerns about more relate to the wider issues with the water cycle study, but they disagree. We don't have to agree with the Environment Agency. Fundamentally, again, they can come to the examination and be heard by the inspectorate, but it would be nice to reach a position where we're in agreement with the Environment Agency on the water cycle study, and that's what we're trying to work towards in the time available. And then the meeting I've got later this week is the start of those conversations to try and reach that point. I think our consultant team have already been through the Environment Agency's comments and acknowledged there are at least some things in there that they accept they need to address. So I would envisage there being some updates to the water cycle study, and hopefully we can address the Environment Agency's concerns and reach a position by the point of submission where everybody's happy with that. Similarly with the primary care and healthcare needs, I have, I don't think it's in the diary yet, but been trying to set up a meeting with healthcare providers about those concerns. They were involved in the production of the infrastructure delivery plan that accompanies the plan, so we should have captured all of their needs in terms of healthcare infrastructure and included those in those assessments. I acknowledge there do seem to be some concerns about that. Again, as I say, we don't necessarily have to agree with them. Just because they're concerned from a soundness perspective doesn't necessarily mean we are, or the inspector would be at examination. But again, I want to work with them and try and reach agreement if we can, and get to a point where everybody's signed up to a statement of common ground that can go in with the plan that shows how we've worked together and address those issues. I should say, as I say, again, with the Environment Agency, there's been discussions all along. So this is trying to address the remaining concerns, but it's been an ongoing conversation with all of these parties. In terms of accessible and adaptable homes, we have certainly bolstered the requirements, obviously, in this plan, as members will be aware, and that has raised concerns about viability from the developers. As said in response to Councillor Brian Bailey's comments, we are tied by national policy in terms of having to consider viability issues, and the viability of the plan is an issue for the examination as well, so that will all come out through that work. I don't think we can avoid saying it's subject to it being commercially viable, because it is by definition as a result of the government requirements. What will come into play, I think, if that is the case in the future, if the plan is found sound and we get to applications on individual sites where this is an issue, would be balancing our requirements about accessible and adaptable homes with other requirements. You know, might we have to trade off a small proportion of affordable housing to secure accessible and adaptable homes? Those are the kinds of conversations we would need to have. But fundamentally, our evidence suggests that it is all viable. So inevitably, developers challenge that. That's usual with a plan like this, and we'll have to see how that plays out through the examination process. I think that brings me finally to Councillor Ledger's comments, which I did touch on about affordability ratio. So yes, it does make a difference to the overall standard method calculation, not a big one, but it's cumulative impact as that comes down. But as it's come down, it could just as easily go back up again. So those changes could easily be reversed. So it's a bit dangerous to rely on those and then reduce the number of sites we're allocating in the plan because of that, when by the time we get to examination or by the time the plan is adopted, the affordability ratio, we could have had another 2 years worth of figures. So the changes we've seen over the last couple of years could easily be reversed. So it's dangerous to jump on that and make changes. I think it's better to leave things as they are and accept we're building in more headroom, but we may well need that through the examination process for the plan to be found sound.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Sorry, me again. I do want to bring up one thing related to Exmo 20, which received an absolutely enormous amount of responses in this consultation. And I know that you were particularly keen to concentrate on certain areas, not necessarily specific site allocations in the second consultation. But one area which came up, which I'm particularly interested in, and because the air quality report on the regarding the Pebble Beth Heath is still outstanding, and was mentioned in the response to the consultation, was mentioned in the public speaking today, which is the significant amount uplift in vehicle journeys that are going to be going across Pebble Bed Heaths resulting from Exmo 20. And is that something which officers consider might be a sort of a red line, as it were, that is going to make it really difficult for that site to be valid, if it can't, you know, if we can't pass this air quality standards? Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Right, I'll try and say that quicker. So it's regarding the air quality report, and specifically because there were quite a very large number of responses specifically about Exmo 20, and obviously that is going to have, going directly onto the B3179, so it's going to have a direct impact on the number of vehicle journeys every day going across the Pebble Bed Heath, because that would be the main access point onto that road. So do officers believe that that is going to be something that is going to be, on which that site allocation is going to stand and fall, whether or not we can pass the air quality standards that are going to be required for the conservation of the Pebble Bed Heaths? Thanks.
Through you, Chair, just to respond to that, I mean, obviously Exmo 20, as has been said, does contribute to the uplift in vehicle movements over the Pebble Bed Heaths, but I wouldn't want members to think that that's the only site. There are a large number of sites in the plan that have an impact in terms of the air quality issues, because fundamentally the A3052 is one of the main arterial routes through the district and runs directly over the Pebble Bed Heaths. So there's a lot of sites right the way east across the district where people's natural movements east-west across the district is along the A3052. Sites as far east as Seaton have an impact. So we need to consider the cumulative impact of the strategy in the plan, and that's what we're doing at the moment. Obviously, should we get to a position where we can't come up with an adequate mitigation strategy, then, you know, all things need to be considered as potential ways of addressing those, but we're not at the point yet of looking at individual sites and revisiting allocations. I say I'll know more once I've met with the consultant team next week, and we'll bring further updates to the committee as things move forward, but I'm not at the point of looking at potentially changing our views on allocations at this stage.
Vice Chair, Councillor Bailey.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to ask Ed, please, about the Supported Housing Regulatory Oversight Act 2023 and the new statutory guidance around supported living, and how that fits in with our policy HN 03 and HN 04, and whether we're developing that strategy at the moment.
I think the short answer is I'm not familiar with that, so I don't know. I would need to look into that and come back to you.
Councillor Young.
Just to explain that the air quality report was on air quality now, and the effect of transport basically on the Pebbleward Heath now and not in the future. So we have to do something to correct what is happening now, not what might happen in the future.
Yeah, just to clarify, so there's an assessment of the situation now. This is an existing problem. You're right. In terms of the local plan, we need to consider the impact of the growth in the plan and how it makes that situation worse. But it's not that we're creating a problem through the plan as drafted. It's an existing problem that we weren't previously aware of, because, you know, the guidance from Natural England, the studies, the work didn't exist to understand these impacts. But it is an existing impact. The impact on the local plan is the additional growth and how that adds to that impact. But it's very much an existing problem.
I really think we're in debate now anyway. Councillor Faithfull, did you want to?
It's just another little question. June 2027, is that still likely to be achievable as a going live? And also, while we're at it, can we check punctuation and grammar in there? There's some monsters in there. Thank you.
Any other councillors? Yes, Councillor Levine.
Thank you, Chair. I was saving my stupid question to the end. The air quality of the Pebblebed Heaths, it's totally out of our hands. The public will decide what sort of cars they're going to drive, electric, diesel. So the question that I had came to my mind, why is it not possible to impose an ultra-low emission zone for the roads through the heath?
I really think that's one for Devon County Council. Might be something that comes out in mitigation. I don't think, Mr. Freeman, you want to attempt that, do you?
Well, my understanding is that, you know, it wouldn't prevent polluting vehicles from going through there. They would have to pay a charge fundamentally. So what would they be paying a charge to? It would have to be to deliver mitigation, and that's where we are, is trying to develop a mitigation strategy. So the ULEZ zone would be about how do we collect contributions to that mitigation strategy. But from a planning perspective, our concern is the impact of growth in the local plan. So a ULEZ zone might be an alternative way of collecting funding towards that strategy, but it's way beyond planning and this council. As the Chair says, it would be potentially for Devon County Council and wider issues, because you're effectively charging people that already live here and already drive that road, whereas from a planning perspective, we're concerned with future growth and future residents and the impact of that.
Right, committee. No other speakers? Councillor Young and Councillor Bailey then.
Yeah, one of the suggestions from Ed was that we have frequently asked questions, so we can cover most of these points. And I would like to make a suggestion that that's added to the recommendations for this report.
Are you proposing all recommendations or just adding
I,
that
I would
one?
like to propose the 2 recommendations plus a third one to introduce FAQs.
Yeah, that's all I was just going to say, did you? Just to remember that addition.
Thank you very much. Councillor, before you do, Councillor Fitzgerald, did you want, not Councillor Fitzgerald, sorry. I'm having one of those days. Yeah. Did you want any chance?
Yes, I do.
Very much.
Thank you, Mike. Concerning the air quality, see in the report here that it is presumed that there will be less diesel and petrol cars, so therefore, by definition, less pollution. However, electric cars are supposed to be the future. If the take-up is as anticipated, there'll be a lot more electric cars, which are about 50% heavier than a conventional car because of the batteries. This gives a 30% increase in tyre wear, which produces minuscule little bits of rubber which will be flying around in the air on that road, which is going to really leave the pollution more or less as it is. It's not going to make it any better or any worse, because the fact that we've got less diesel and less petrol fumes is going to be balanced out by the rubber. So we've got one going out and one coming in. So that was a point I'd like to make. Also, the old chestnut of the lack of capacity from South West Water for sewerage, which it seems to be put down to the future. Well, we'll see what happens, sort of thing. There's no specific. South West Water will put in a treatment plant here, there, and everywhere where they're necessary. But it's not stated in. It's very vague in the report. You know, as and when. And we've, as Mr. Freeman said earlier, well, it runs for up till another 20 years. But we're assuming it'll be done in 20 years. Well, the last major investment by South West Water was a clean sweep, which was about 25 years ago in Buddy Salter and Exmouth and Lipstone. Nothing's happened since. And we all know that it floods regularly, it's not fit for purpose. And also, one other thing, if I may, it's assumed that the access to Exmouth 20, if heaven forbid it goes ahead, will be through the main road going past the Archery Club in the Pebblebed Heaths. However, my interpretation of the NPPF is there's a buffer zone of 400 metres where nothing can go through that buffer zone. No construction. Well, a road is a construction. Therefore, you cannot use that to get to the main road. Thank you, Chair.
Do you want to have a go?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So yes, I mean, our understanding is that obviously there will be less diesel and petrol vehicles in the future, and the expectation is that electric vehicles will become more normal. Well, there will be more electric vehicles on the road. And that does partly address the issue. That's partly what the consultants have been remodelling, is more up-to-date evidence about the likely uptake of electric vehicles in the years to come. It's the gaseous emissions from diesel and petrol vehicles that has the impact on the habitat. So the change to electric vehicles does fundamentally quite significantly address that. I don't know enough about it to comment on sort of rubber pollution coming from increased tyre wear through there, but I don't think that in itself necessarily has an issue on the habitat. But no doubt our consultants will be looking at that issue as well. In terms of sewage capacity, is very much something we're looking at, and we are in discussions with South West Water and trying to understand the timeline of their investments in infrastructure versus our trajectories for housing sites coming forward, and how all of that works to ensure that the infrastructure is in place in time before the new homes are built and occupied, and development starts to impact on their infrastructure. That is going to take time to resolve. I'm not expecting we're going to have those answers for the local plan. I don't think we need those answers for the local plan fundamentally, but I do appreciate the concerns that members and residents have about those issues. So we are in ongoing discussions and working with them to try and get to a position where we have a full understanding of how they will enhance their infrastructure to address the incoming future demands on it that will come through the local plan and the developments proposed within it. I think the 400-metre buffer zone is one of the things that perhaps needs to be picked up in this FAQs, because I think there is some misunderstanding over that. But that there is no reason why you can't have an access road to a site through the 400-metre zone. The 400-metre zone is more about particularly residential development and the impacts of that on the 400 metres and the Pebblebed Heaths. I know there's some disagreement over how we should interpret it in terms of commercial developments, which perhaps we need to clarify. But there's certainly no reason why you can't have a road within the 400 metres.
It's your choice. Right, Councillor Young, hopefully for the last time.
Yeah, just to come back on a couple of points that Councillor Bailey brought up. South West Water do a 5-year plan on their investments, and Exmouth is included in the next 5-year plan. That seems to be possibly going into the next 5-year plan at the moment. There's a misnomer on rubber tyres. They're not rubber tyres, they're plastic. And what is picked up, what is left on the road is microplastics that go into the drains, that go into the rivers, that goes into the sea. And that is something that the Environment Agency and other bodies are working on at the moment.
Right, we have a proposal.
Mr. Chairman, is my question not worthy of an answer? June 20.
Through you, Chair, I mean, with the submission date of the plan changing, obviously the rest of the timetable will change in terms of when the examination will be and when ultimately adoption of the plan would be envisaged. So I think I said in the report, we'll need to update the local development scheme when we've worked all of that out, and we'll bring that to a future meeting for members to consider.
Right, going back to the proposal. So we have recommendation 1 and 2, and Councillor Young, you wish a third recommendation, which is basically the FAQs Mr. Freeman knows about, to be done and sorted. And second is happy with that. Are you happy with that, Damien?
I just wanted to clarify, because my understanding was that it was for Mr. Freeman to bring a report back to the next SPC meeting, answering the questions raised at today's meeting. But is it broader, that, you know, with further questions that you're intending to come back with the answers to?
And my understanding, and I'll throw this back to the committee if they want to correct me, was that it was on wider issues, in that a number of public speakers have raised a number of issues frequently over a number of meetings now around legal compliance with the habitat regulations, the housing numbers issue, for example, the position in terms of the water cycle study and investments by South West Water, and just wanting a concise document that brings together those key issues that keep being raised as sort of frequently asked questions that members can then refer to in future.
And that certainly was my understanding. Going to Councillor Hayward's point earlier on as well about other answers, I think I would pick that up with the Cabinet member who's not here today to see how we can work that through a different system. But I'm happy with that. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Chair, from my point of view, is just to make sure that we're clear, that Mr. Freeman's clear what you want, that's all, because I thought it had developed to more than just the answers to today's questions. Thank you.
Can I suggest that alongside the water provision, water and wastewater provision, that also is included just the general statutory consultees, so that's highways and NHS as well, because that's something that keeps coming up again and again, and I think people often don't understand that that's something which runs alongside but isn't directly under our control. Thank you.
Right, committee. We have a proposal, all seconded. Can I have a show of hands? All in agreement, please. Unanimous. We've debated. We've been debating for quite a while. I did say we'd moved into debate a while ago.
So, Chair, can we just check then, is that unanimous?
Can I please have a show of hands of those agreeing with the recommendation?
No. Those against? Is that an abstention?
That's an abstention, yeah. Okay, I think we need a 10-minute break, please, committee, before we come back for the last two items. So, 10 to? 10 to, please. Right then, committee, please. Not having this sitting around. Can I please remind committee, when speaking, to speak directly into the mics? People at the back are struggling, even so. So, moving on. Item 8, the Heritage Strategy 24 to 42. Mr. Freeman, please.
Thank you, Chair. So members will be aware that when we consulted on the second Reg 19 consultation on the local plan, we also consulted alongside that on an updated heritage strategy, which aligns with the plan period for the local plan and takes us through to 2042. So this report feeds back on the comments that we received through that consultation and the changes that were subsequently made to the plan. So you'll see there's a full list of amendments to the strategy in our response to the feedback in Appendix A, and then in Appendix B you have a track changes version of the strategy that just draws all of those amendments and changes together. A lot of this really is not about the fundamentals of the strategy. I think respondents for the most part, can see that it's great that we've got a heritage strategy and we have these plans in place to look after and enhance heritage assets in the district. It's largely consultation responses about the wording that's used in places, references to legislation and requirements of the legislation, and things like that that we've sought to address through the changes to the plan. So I'm not going to go through all of those in detail. It's there in the report and the appendices for members to review. We did have a good response through the consultation, and we've considered all of those comments. I would ask members to agree adoption of the final strategy as set out. That's recommendation 1, and then members are asked to note the strategy and how it supports the local plan as evidence. And 3, note that the strategy should be taken into account as a guide for our cultural tourism and planning functions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Freeman. Going straight outside of committee, Councillor Hookway, did you want to?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for letting me speak. Yes. So anything that has a mention of culture and tourism piques my attention, and I'm very supportive of the heritage strategy in particular. But it's the sections on the World Heritage Site that are the ones that I'm most concerned about. This is a superb attraction and for visitors that for many years I think we have underplayed. However, recently there have been changes to the way it's been marketed, and those will be coming to overview at the end of the month. But really we do need to appreciate the World Heritage Site for what it is, and also to understand that it is under attack from climate change and coastal erosion, and that therefore that this particular strategy is a very important part in the jigsaw in protecting the World Heritage Site and reassuring people that we're looking after it, and also to allow officers and businesses that rely upon the World Heritage Site that we are supporting them and we are going to do our best to try and protect it. So therefore, I hope the committee will support the recommendations, particularly number 3. Thank you, Chair.
Very much. Nothing else from outside? No? Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Chair. I'm rather disappointed with the report. There's very little mention of agricultural heritage. Sadly, many farms in East Devon have gone now. They've been converted into dwellings, holiday cottages, etc., or businesses. And we need to protect the traditional farms that are left. I don't know how you can do that, but they certainly need protecting. They have valuable history going back many, many centuries and generations. My farm in particular is mentioned in 1100s. So there's history all the way back from the 1100 to the present day. And I still farm in a traditional way with the stone buildings and everything, not these modern type porter buildings. I did go to Stockland a couple years ago when they had a local history display there, and I do recommend that people go to these things when they see them advertised. But at Stockland, it showed years ago when there were a big estate and the farms were all rented from the estate and how that worked. Most of that is lost now, but you still do have the Clinton estate in East Devon. That's about the only one we've got now that rents out farms. It's very sad to me. I quite like the way the aristocracy used to work years ago, and what is left we should be preserving. No, it does sadden me terribly. Well, you know, I travel around Devon all over, and you see all these farms gone. And like I say, there's tremendous history and farming families. Many have been there for a good many generations. There's the 7th generation now on my farm from father to son. Earlier on, Councillor Haywood said about landowners can sell that. Why are they selling their land? They're forced to sell very often because you get developers come round. They've come round to me since 1985. I've got probably 20 letters or more home from various solicitors, developers, wanting to take your land. They'll tell you packs of lies that your neighbours are signing up and all the rest of it. So farmers are generally forced into selling because they're afraid that they will have compulsory purchase put on them if they don't. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right, into committee. Councillor Faithful, you?
Thank you, Chair. Can we please have the correct list of portfolio holders at the top of our agenda for a start? And my question on that is, why is this is clearly about culture and environment, as is described as central MPPF and all that. So why is the culture or environment portfolio holders not included with a cross on them? Also, why is Norman Lockyer Observatory not recognised as a heritage asset? And I mean, there's a whole stack of typos and spelling in there, which could we please go through and check that? But also AOMB, sometimes we're saying national landscapes and sometimes we're still talking AOMB, so could that be corrected? I think that's enough for now.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for this. It was a really interesting read. I'm particularly interested in the listed building side of things. I don't think it mentions in the report how many listed buildings there are in East Devon. I would be really interested if we know that number, to know what it is. I suspect there's an awful lot of them compared with other parts of the country. I'm also, I live in a listed building myself, and there must be several dozen listed buildings in my village. I think I tried to count them the other day. I saw a map, it was at least sort of 50 in a village of something like 300, 350 houses. I'm quite staggered often speaking to other listed building owners how little people know about their obligations as an owner of a listed building, and interesting to read through this and understand what the obligations are and what enforcement action can be taken when when works are done to listed buildings that are effectively illegal. And I know that some really quite devastating works have happened to really important buildings in my ward. Once the work's done, even if enforcement action is taken afterwards, you can't replace what has been taken away. So my question is really around I hear all the time people saying, oh, well, you can do what you like to the inside of a Grade 2 listed building, can't you? I would say that the majority of people I speak to about that, and quite often tradespeople as well, that is their understanding. So what could this council do to help educate people who are purchasing listed buildings about what their duties and obligations are, to help them make sure that they're on the front foot? Thank you.
On that, being as you mentioned the word purchasing, although I'll come back to your point, their lawyer, their solicitor, is the person that should be telling them exactly what their responsibilities are at that time. Because at the purchase point, all those are exactly what the solicitor is for. Your point, though, and what I think you're making is later on, that's a different matter. And I do think there might be something we as East Devon, possibly with the other councils around, actually do as a PR bit to actually remind people to check their listing, to make sure what's included in their listing. But fundamentally, your point at purchasing, that's what the lawyers and solicitors are for, because they explain it very well.
I don't think I had it explained to me by my solicitor when we bought our house, and that was only, what, 6 years ago. I don't recall that at all. So perhaps and it seems like a direct channel to there's only certain number of conveyancing solicitors. Well, that's if you use a solicitor within the district, but perhaps that would be a good sort of starting point, I suppose, in terms of educating people who need to be told. Thank you.
No problem. Councillor Hayward, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's just one very minor point. One is to thank all the officers involved for bringing this forward to us and for compiling it. It's an utterly fascinating document and very helpful and a really interesting read for anyone, even if you're not interested in planning. If you watch this afterwards, it's a wonderful document that sums up why we love living where we live. The other minor point, very parochial, 2.23 of the edited report. Again, it's a very parochial one. Could the officers just include Axminster in that list of towns in East Devon that have a conservation area? We are name checked elsewhere, but in that particular item, it sort of excludes us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Opening up to debate, we've really done the questions. Anyone wish to? In that case, I will move from the chair. Oh, Councillor Young, sorry.
Yeah, thank you for that. Two things. Listed buildings. Now, people who work on listed buildings deserve medals, and I would like to see some sort of help provided by East Devon when these people want planning permission, because I have more queries over listed building consent than pretty well anything else. Whether that's going to be possible. Also, picking up from my colleague on Councillor Hookway, Jurassic Coast. As I'm responsible for the coastal protection side of things, we are fully aware of the importance of the Jurassic Coast, and our joint business that is looking at coastal protection with Bournemouth Pool and Christchurch. We're working on a policy of how we do that on the Jurassic Coast. It's interesting that Jurassic Coast is in the same category as the Taj Mahal, and if you ever consider that the Indian government would repaint it or do something with it, that is the same sort of category that the Jurassic Coast is in. So we have to look at the Jurassic Coast very, very carefully when we're doing any coastal protection works. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No other takers? In that case, I will move from the chair the three recommendations, which you've all got in front of you. I don't need a seconder for that. Any other comments? Councillor Levine, are you all right? I was going to do a share. Yeah, no problem. Right then, committee. No further discussion. Can I have a show of hands for those in favour of the recommendation? Councillor Faithful, yep. Unanimous. That is. In that case, moving on to number 9. The self-build and custom house building update. Mr. Freeman, please.
Thank you, Chair. So long-standing members of the committee will be familiar with these annual reports on the self-building, custom house building monitoring reports. So the latest position is that there's a supply of 18 plots come forwards in the 24-25 monitoring period. So that's a modest increase on the 15 of 23-24. And the figure continues to fit with the trend of lower levels of supply noted in recent years. But this does meet the requirements and is sufficient fundamentally. I'm not going to go into the detail that's in the report. Obviously, there's a lot of detail about the specifics of this. Happy to pick up any questions, but fundamentally the recommendations are that members are asked to endorse the draft monitoring report for use in planning decisions, both policy and development management, and agree its publication on the website. Note the 8 individuals that have been added to the self-build register in the monitoring period, which generates a need to permission 6 further plots suitable between October 25 and October 28. So we need to make sure that we do that in the coming years, albeit on current projections we should do. And 3, note the demand for self-build plots indicated on the register should be taken into account in our planning, housing, regeneration and the state functions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Committee? Nothing at all. Well, outside committee, there's only 2 left. No? No? Councillor Faithful?
Thank you, Chair. Well, if you go to, is it part 4 on page 12, is that all the publicity effort we've made? Because you look at the numbers, this is not, to me, an acknowledgement of how many people are interested in self-build. It's about how many people are willing to put their names forward to East Devon District Council as to whether or not they're interested. But if nobody knows that the register is there, because to find it, you have to go through God knows what, here, there and everywhere into planning and tucked away right at the back. If people don't know the register exists, nobody's going to put their name onto it. So I don't think it's got anything like the publicity it needs to acknowledge how many people are actually genuinely interested. So I think this is not a sound piece of work, because of the simple fact that to say that only 8 people are interested and all these tables you got, all because there happened to be a group of people in Wimple who seem to know about it, so we've got all these numbers for Wimple. So I don't think this is, the figures you're working with are sound. Thank you, Chair.
Just on that, if you type in self-build East Devon into any web search, the very second hit you get is self-build and custom register, how to register. So I would argue quite the opposite. I mean, it's not perfect, nothing ever is in life, but nevertheless. Mr. Freeman, would you like to make a comment on that?
You've beaten me to it, Chair. I did exactly the same thing. I just Googled it. It was the first thing that comes up, basically. I mean, every local authority in the country has to have a self-build register. So anyone who's investigated self-build will know that there's a register, and hopefully will just Google East Devon District Council self-build register, and it will take them straight to it. So I'm not sure what else we could do anyway, to be honest, because we don't know necessarily where these people are going to come from and where the interest is to target them. So all we can do is have a web page that they can find, and a Google search shows that they should be able to find that easily.
Yes, go for it.
Well, it's a very simple way to let people know. It's called East Devon District Council Facebook page. Thank you, Chair.
Nevertheless. Right, committee, no other comments on that, only just about PR. We have 3 recommendations. Everyone's read them as per the agenda. I'll move from the chair again, as no one else wants to speak, unless, are you, Councillor Hayward? That really does make me nervous. No, in that case, I'll move. I'll move from the chair the 3 recommendations as per written. Looking at Damien, are you happy with that?
I am, yeah.
Good. In that case, show of hands, please, committee.
11, I think, in
Yeah.
favour.
Yeah, and against, abstention. So 1 against, and that's it. In that case, thank you very much, committee. That is the end of our agenda today. Good luck, good night, and see you soon.